Hey everybody, my name is James Shepard. I'd like to welcome you to this live event replay. So actually last week I did a live event with my good friend Ben Ross from Green Payments. And so what I'm going to do for you today is I want to talk a little bit about integrated payments. Specifically, we're going to dive into pharmacies and how to sell pharmacies. Then I'm going to transition over into the recorded section, which is the interview that I did with Ben Ross right here in the studio. And so we're going to transfer over to that in a minute. But by way of introduction here, I want to talk for a minute about the state of our industry and the state of integrated payments today and verticalization, right? So I talk a lot about this, obviously on my podcast and in all of my content, the idea that agents and ISOs need to be thinking about integrated payments and verticalization. But what do I mean by that? What is actually important when we talk about this shift? And so number one is a term that just doesn't get talked about very much in the payments industry, but at least not with agents and ISOs, but it is like the only thing that gets talked about really in the software industry, and that is a term called lifetime value. So when we think about an account, right, a good way to think about an account and the value of an account is to say, if we look at all of the payments that we are ever going to get from this particular merchant account, right, how much would that be worth, right? What is the sum of all of those payments, right? What is that lifetime value? So as an example, if I have a customer that's going to give me 3 payments of $100, that customer has a lifetime value of $300. If that customer is going to pay me 60 payments of $100, right, 60 monthly payments of $100, well, then that merchant has a valuation, a lifetime value of $6,000, right? So the same $100 monthly margin or monthly payment, but in the one scenario, we're only talking about it being worth $300. In the other scenario, we're talking about it being worth $6,000, right? So what is this concept of lifetime value, right? Well, how does it come about? Well, let's look at the formula. So the formula that I have here for lifetime value, which for those who pay attention, I realize this is overly simplified, and I know in the software industry you're laughing at me because we're not talking about a variety of things here, but just bear with me in a simplistic example. So we have margin times residual split times retention. Okay, that is how we get lifetime value, right? Now again, overly simplified here, but just trying to get the point across that we have these 3 key variables when we look at lifetime value. Number one is the margin. So as we look at these accounts, right, we say, okay, well, what is the monthly margin on the account? Right? There's a lot of forces that drive margin up or down. For a long time now, we've had dual pricing and surcharging and cash discounting type programs that really increase the average margin on these accounts, right? So we think about margin, we talk about margin quite a bit, but there are other things that we can do that can really solidify that margin. For instance, integrated payments. When we're selling someone and they're getting a vertical specific software solution, guess what? There's not as much pricing pressure. They're willing to spend a little bit more on the payment side in order to get that software as a general rule, or at the very least, they're willing to match what they currently are paying and they're not expecting a big savings. Even better, if we bring dual pricing or surcharging or cash discounting, if we bring those concepts of differential pricing with the integrated payment solution, so it's embedded in the software, even better, right? Now we go in, we offer extensive savings, we offset the cost of the software and the hardware potentially in some scenarios, and we also have really high margins, right? So margin, very, very important, okay? Next one, and the one that gets focused on the most, is going to be residual split, okay? Now, I want to caution you here because is residual split important in this calculation? Yes, of course it is, right? Very important. However, it is actually not the most important element in terms of the lifetime value as a general rule. Let me explain to you why that would be, okay? I want you to imagine for a minute that we have a merchant account. And let's say that the gross margin on that merchant account is $100 per month. To make the math easy, so we have $100 per month. Okay, that's how much this account produces. The question is, what is the lifetime value? Well, if you have a 50% residual split on that $100, right? Or you have let's say you have an 80% residual split, okay? Which one of those two is going to produce a larger lifetime value? Well, you don't know. You know why you don't know? Because you don't know what the third number is, which is the retention. So what I mean by that is, If you say, well, I have a $100 a month account at 50% split, so I'm making $50 a month, okay, but that account is going to be with me for 60 months. That's a lifetime value of $3,000. Now, if you look at that same account and you say, well, this account is $100 in margin, I've got an 80% split, so it's $80 a month instead of $50, but I'm placing a standalone terminal and they're going to cancel on average in, let's say, 12 months, right? Well, now we have a lifetime value of $960 because we have 12 times 80, right? So the question is, would you rather have that account at a 50% split with lifetime, with a integrated solution where they're going to stick around for 5 years, 10 years, right? Or would you rather have the 80% split, right? And they're going to have a standalone terminal and they're going to cancel in 12 months or 18 months, right? So again, obviously in an ideal scenario, and of course we have Green Payments with us today to talk about, their programs, and they have very, very aggressive residual splits and integrated payments. So you can get some of both of these things. But my point is, we have a little bit too much of a focus, I think, on this residual split component, maybe even a little too much of a focus on the margin component, rather than understanding that the long game here is about the retention. So we have to think about lifetime value as a super important component of what we're doing. Okay, so again, retention is really where it's at. We got to think about retention. We have to look at what's driving retention, and again, this is not a secret anymore, right? It's interesting to me. Almost everything about retention these days is really about integrated payments and the solution that's being provided. I mean, even things that used to drive attrition, like pricing actions, price increases, things like that, PCI compliance fees, whatever it might be, sure, those still have an impact, right? But ultimately, the payments industry is getting eaten by software. And so the number that's in the metric that's impacting retention the most is just what is the solution that this merchant has. If you're placing a standalone terminal, you're kind of just placing a holding, something to hold the account for a little while, but they are going to switch. It's like a placeholder. They're going to switch to a fully integrated solution that's got more value for them. Now, does that mean it's wrong to place a standalone terminal? No, not at all. If that's what the merchant wants right now, sure, but we're definitely wanting to make sure that they know that we really want to help them out with an integrated solution, and we have the ability to do that a little bit further down the road when the time is right for them. But if we just place a standalone terminal and leave it alone and say, well, we'll just see how long we keep it, probably not very long, okay? So retention. Now, here's the word I want to talk about, and then I want to transition over and introduce Ben here and transition to that part of the recording, because this next word is partnership. Now, what's happened is the role of the agent and the ISO in the payments industry has become, to me, the most interesting thing right now in the payments industry, right? There was all these other variables for the last few years. I think about, integrated payments. I think about verticalization and all that. But honestly, I think for the most part, all of those things are known. We can understand them. I could talk to you about any of these things with confidence. If you're wondering, are merchants going to want software with integrated payments? The answer is yes. I think we all know that, right? At some point in the next 5-10 years, almost every business in America is going to be using software with integrated payments. Done, right? Are they going to want a solution that's specific to their business type? Yes, in almost every situation, right? The questions may be around, well, how fast is that going to happen? But we know it's going to happen, right? What's interesting now is, well, what does that mean? What is the role for the agent and the ISO, right? Are we supposed to become software experts? Are we still payments experts? And if we are, how do we work together with a software company? And all these questions. And so when I was looking for the right partner to bring to our industry, right, which I consider a really important thing, I was like, I want a company that's all in on the 1099, kind of traditional ISO, model, lifetime vested residuals, all of that, but also somebody that was really embracing this idea of integrated payments and verticalization. So I found Ben Ross and Cliff from Green Payments and started talking to them, and it's really amazing what they have built. And so as you look at the future and what you're trying to build, establishing the right partnerships is going to be crucial. Do you go right to the software company, right? Or do you go through a payment processing company like a Green Payments? Do you have several? It depends on what verticals you're going to go after. Do you go after several verticals and you just schedule demos? Or do you become really an expert in one or two verticals and sell the solution, the software, right? These are all very, very important decisions. And so today, we're gonna be talking specifically here about pharmacies. So the pharmacy vertical is one of three that Green Payments is really focused on right now. And so with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and transition over to the part of the podcast here with Ben Ross, and we're gonna talk to him about Green Payments, their focus on vertical solutions, but we're also gonna talk about pharmacies, how you specifically go after the pharmacy vertical and sell pharmacies on a solution that is highly profitable, that generates a high margin, right? With a competitive residual split with very minimal attrition to maximize lifetime value. So let's transition over to that part of the recording now. So Ben, as we think about Green Payments, right? Help us understand, first of all, who you are and what your role for those who maybe don't know, but then also maybe share why is Green Payments so focused on this vertical specific software, these partners that you guys have, and also the 1099 channel.
For sure. So I'm Ben Ross, Chief Operating Officer of Green Payments. And, at the end of the day, we're a payments ISO, but what we're focused on is really payment solutions. And so to your specific question of why we believe so strongly in ISVs is it's just where the market is. It's where merchants are. It's what they need. They're no longer purely looking for a payment terminal on a counter. What they're focused on is how they run their business more efficiently. And, at the end of the day, the savings plays of 10 years ago, or even, the cash discount play and surcharge play, it's still there, right? But the reality is what you need to provide is a full solution, because if not, those who are will easily and have been integrating in cash discount or surcharge or any of these other solutions. So that's why for us, our focus is, getting the right solutions for our partners.
Yeah, I love it. So, so as we transition over specifically today, talking about pharmacies, right? And I know we'll circle back to some other things, some really exciting actually programs you guys have and bonus programs and all this. But to dive into the pharmacy specifically at a high level, for those who don't understand that market, what are the big kind of macro challenges that you see the pharmacy industry facing in general? And then we can kind of dive a bit more into the payment side.
For sure. I would say the biggest challenge currently in the pharmacy space is the shift of the consumer. And what I mean by that is if you go back, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, pretty much everyone went to a pharmacy, picked up a script, paid, maybe they bought a, thing of milk or a pack of gum and they left, right?
Right.
The reality of today is most people are actually going right on their phone or right on their computer or calling in, ordering their scripts, or they go into the pharmacy, they order it, and then they say, you know what, I don't want to come back. Can you just, resend me this? Or can I call you when I need a refill? Because I don't really have the time to come. I'm used to Uber Eats for my food. I want my Uber Eats for pharmacy, right? And so the challenge that's created is, the card brands view card not present sales as technically speaking high risk, right? And so that's created a bit of friction for a lot of the larger players that are in the space because they don't technically handle those transactions, or they haven't, from a compliance perspective, gotten things in order because, all through COVID, these retail pharmacies that never had card not present transactions started doing it because of the need of COVID. And then they've continued doing it post-COVID. And now, as of this year, the card brands have really been tightening up on some of that, compliance stuff. And so I think that's really for us as payment professionals, but even for the pharmacists themselves and the pharmacy owners, that's been the biggest shift and has created the biggest opening for us.
Okay, and then so then diving into a specific term that that we want to talk about is talk about card not present, is this idea of a compound pharmacy. What is a compound pharmacy? What does that mean from a payments perspective?
So a compounding pharmacy compared to a retail pharmacy would be, if you think one of those kind of warehouse style pharmacies where it's not necessarily, patients aren't coming in to pick up things. They may go in person, but typically they're not. It's a lot of times it's mail order, stuff like that. And they're actually compounding and making the drugs there essentially. So they're putting, they're making the products there. And so that's really the difference between a retail pharmacy where you're going in and they may also have some eggs and, gum and whatever other stuff versus a compounding pharmacy that's typically more kind of warehouse style and everything's getting shipped.
Got it. Okay. All right. So I think we understand the pharmacy vertical a little bit. And by the way, if you have questions about any of this right now, just go ahead and put them in the questions. We're going to do a Q&A here in a little bit, but I want to cover a little bit more about the sales process and the point of sale. But definitely go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A or in the chat. Either one's fine. And we'll do our best to go through those here at the end. So let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about sales.
Yep.
So I'm a salesperson. I don't know anything about pharmacies, which is actually true, other than what I've learned from you. And so I want to go out and sell pharmacies.
Yep.
what are these options? Are there still small, like independently owned pharmacies? What if I want to go after a little bit larger one? Like, give me some idea of like what are the segments of this market?
There's a combination. So there still are plenty of the single-owned, for multi-generation, family-owned kind of mom and pop pharmacies. There's also a lot of regional groups, or I'll compare them almost to a DSO if you've worked with dental practices and those types of groups, where they may have kind of one or two similar partners or similar ownership throughout,
right.
And they may have 10, 15 locations, whatever it may be. So there's both options, and they're all great to go after, because the reality is pharmacies, just the way this society is, volumes aren't going down, right? More and more people are going to them, and so the volumes from an industry perspective, they just keep going up.
Oh wow, that's like, I really didn't think about that before. That's interesting. Yeah, so this is definitely an industry that has long-term growth potential.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so when we go out there and I walk into this pharmacy,
Yep.
I need to have something to say. So I get the owner of the pharmacy, and I say what? What am I asking them questions? What am I talking about?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the first question and good thing to confirm is ask them what pharmacy management software they use. So there's a few different key ones out there, right? There's RX Dispenser, RX Manager. There's PK software, which is a great one that we integrate with Cashier Live. And there's a plethora of other ones out there. The key would be to ask and figure out which one they have, because that'll be part of our discovery process to confirm the integration and all of that, and how we would set them up. So that's always a great question, and it's a nice, easy kind of icebreaker that now what
Right.
kind of how their business works, and you open the dialogue from there.
Okay, so I opened it up with that, and then what are other questions I want to follow up on? So let me actually back up a minute. Pharmacy management systems. So to clarify, I think what you're saying is there's pharmacy management systems that manage kind of the drug component of like, okay, what are these prescriptions and they're coming in from different doctors and all of that.
Yep.
And then there's the point of sale, which you guys have.
Yep.
And that has to integrate with kind of that back end. Is that right?
100% correct.
Okay,
Yep.
got it. All right. So with that context, then they tell me, okay, we use RX or whatever. Then what's next? Where do I go to next?
So from there, you'll typically get a copy of the processing statement. We always like to get that just as a good baseline to know how they're set up, what their processing volume is, and then at that point, schedule a time with our team, and we'll do a full discovery call with the merchant, confirm, are they one of those compounding pharmacies? Are they more retail? Is it a mix of both? What solution do they really need?
Got it. Okay. And so, yeah, as we're diving into this and we're going in to sell it, I think a big question is kind of the role of the agent in that. And you just alluded to that a little bit. So if I'm an agent, and let's use two examples. Let's say one, I'm like a green agent to some extent. Maybe I've done some terminals here and there, but I'm like, okay, this is a little scary. So I talk to them, I get them interested, I ask a couple of questions, I get a statement or whatever. How involved do I need to be if I really don't want to be that involved?
Yep. It's really up to you. So our team will assist with the whole process. Our objective is to grow you as an agent, as a partner, right, and help you be autonomous. But we also respect and understand, to your point, you may not know it inside and out. So we're going to be there to walk you through every step of the way. So you'll schedule a discovery call. Our team will get on that discovery call. You'll schedule a demo. Our team will get on that demo. You'll submit a statement. Our team will review the proposal and provide some strategy on pricing and assistance in that discussion if needed. So you're really there just to be the quarterback and drive the process through. We'll walk you through every step of that process.
Got it. And so one of the other questions I have, and maybe this isn't even like a pharmacy thing, but just in general, as you look at all these agents that you guys have, is there still a role for the agent who says, I really want to go after like one or two, maybe three verticals, and I actually want to really like deeply understand that, and I want to, I'm gonna learn the point of sale for pharmacies. I'm gonna know it better than anybody else.
Yeah.
And, are you seeing that? Are there agents that are doing that in that level of involvement, and is that working? Like,
yes, we do for sure.
Okay.
And even specific with pharmacies. And yes, I think without question, the more verticalized you are, the more you understand it, the better. So as much as we will be there and assist you through the process, because many of our partners are what I'd call more of kind of a horizontal agent, right? They're in different industries and they, they're knocking on every door in town and they're the payments expert in their community. And that is without question still a great approach to take. But over time, our advice is stay horizontal, but get vertical, right? So you kind of do both. So you're not missing out. You're not losing out in the short term because it is a longer term strategy to be verticalized, right? But you get involved with certain trade associations if it's specific to pharmacy. There's a lot of pharmacy groups in different communities, and you get involved in those, and from that, opportunities come. And then you become the expert, and look, you can be going and doing installs and assisting the merchant and making sure that all those registrations and accreditations are completed and done, and and assisting through all of that and being the face of it, which does just naturally generate more referrals and more direct business to you.
There's a concept in a book. I'm trying to remember the name of this book. It's called Flip the Script. I can't remember the name of the author, but anyways, a sales book. Yeah. And one of the ideas he talked about was the idea of a flash roll. And so he said that like a flash roll is something that an expert will do, where they basically give you this information that you really don't understand. Think of like your attorney, maybe that sort of thing, or even a mechanic. And the mechanic, for me, I know nothing about cars, nothing. I know there's an engine in there somewhere. That's about it. And my mechanic will say to me, well, I had to change out the calipers, and the one was whatever. I don't know. Yeah. Right. And at the end of that, I didn't understand anything that he said, but I know that he knows what he's talking about. Yes. And I'm like, this is the guy I want working on my car because he understands all this. Yeah. He could have totally lied to me. I don't know, but I didn't. It sounded really smart. Yeah. And so he calls that a flash roll. It's the idea of kind of going through. And I think that even if the agents end up still depending a little more on green payments for maybe the demo or the installation or whatever, I just really think that there's this concept of when you really understand what you're talking about, and all the stuff we've talked about today that I don't understand, all the registrations and all that. Man, if I was going to go out to pharmacies, I would want to know that. At a somewhat deep level. I would take a couple of weeks and really dig into this stuff and have some good things to say, because I kind of feel like, man, when you go in there and you say some of that stuff, the pharmacy may or may not have a full understanding of everything you said, but when you kind of give them that. You know what I'm saying? Do you know what I mean?
No question about it.
There's a confidence like, well, this is who I want to work with.
100%. And that's what I was saying as well. I think, to me, the more you know what your merchant's experience is, and, whether it's pharmacy or automotive or a restaurant or, a car dealership, as you mentioned, like any type of business, the more you understand and the shoes they're walking in, the better and more comfortable they're going to be in giving you their business. Right. Because they know, if it's a pharmacy and they're calling you about, like I mentioned before, an HSA card not going through or whatever thing that's happening, if they know you're going to understand what their challenge is and what's happening, they're going to be much happier to work with you. And from a relationship perspective, it just drives more referrals, and it's you're not just a credit card guy or credit card woman. You're their payments partner, and you're their person that's their advisor that's helping them run their business. And when you have that, they'll never look elsewhere. Right. And I will tell you too, when it comes to pharmacies specifically, they're a very well-educated, very sophisticated merchant base, right? And so from a relationship perspective, they're not out there all the time, shopping this, shopping that. They're committed to running their business. They're focused on growing their business, and as long as you're assisting them and helping them with what they need, they will stay equally as committed to you.
I love it. Okay, so what I want to do here, we're going to transition. So before we go to the Q&A, I want to run through a slide here, and I want to give you a chance to kind of like talk about this a bit more because I think it's so interesting. So we've got a slide up here. So I'm just going to have this up. And so explain this program a little bit because this is pretty cool. And then I want to dig into some of this other stuff. But give us the high level here.
Yeah, for sure. And feel free to hit that QR code and go to our About Us page, put your information if you're interested in learning more information and connecting directly. But what we've got here is, as we've talked about, as a company, we're really focused on verticalized solutions. Reason being, if you have a full solution that's in there and the payments is integrated to their business rather than just a terminal on the counter, the reality is the merchant is much more likely to stick with you long term. And so we value that, and we want to encourage our partners to sell that way rather than just focusing on dropping a terminal on the counter. So what we're launching is specific to Cashier Live, which is our pharmacy solution that I was talking about before, Dealer Genie, which is our automotive car dealership solution, and Union, which is our restaurant, and it's really built for high volume bars and restaurants. We're going to be doing a $1,000 bonus for agents that sell any of those solutions. So deal gets approved, activated, $1,000 is going to you. So again, our focus is driving that fully integrated offering and trying to encourage our partners to focus on that as well.
Cool. So, all right. So let's break this down a little bit. So first of all, I know because there'll be a bunch of questions. I'll get ahead of some of the questions. First of all, $1,000 approval bonus. Exactly what has to happen for me to get $1,000?
Sure. Cal gets approved. Merchant activates.
Okay.
You get paid.
Got it. So the merchant starts processing some transactions. We're good to go.
Correct.
Now, obviously, what we see with these deals is there's maybe a little more of a time delay. It's one of the issues, I think, for agents that are a little bit more maybe short-term focused. Yeah. It's like, well, yeah, we got to do a demo. We got to do this installation. If it's union, if it's, whatever, these can be a little more complex. And I know this is a loaded question, but assuming things go reasonably well,
Sure.
what's a normal turnaround time for you guys getting a merchant live?
So it's going to vary with each of those verticals. I would say starting with Cashier Live, it really should be within a week to 2 weeks. It's not a long process.
Okay.
Very straightforward process there. Can be less. Dealer Genie, similarly, it's really that with both of those, it really comes down to the timing on there, and there's not a ton of front end work. A little bit different with Union, which is a full bar, restaurant, point of sale, right? So with that, you've got your menu programming, and there's network checks. There's a bit more that goes into it. Typically on the automotive car dealership side, they tend to have their networks pretty well set. It's a pretty straightforward installation process, and same thing with Cashier Live.
Yeah, that's one thing I hadn't thought about. So that's really interesting. Actually, going back to the pharmacies for a minute, so it's actually a benefit there. I would imagine if they have a pharmacy management system, right, most of the kind of inventory and all that is kind of there. You're just like connecting into an existing database.
Correct. We're a payments front end that's helping them manage all of those payments, right? And so the full point of sale, and it still has some inventory components and all of that, but it's pulling the data from
a database.
their database. Correct.
That's actually really interesting. Okay, so it's not about kind of like we said with a restaurant where it's like, wow, you have to like put everything in, all the modifiers and everything. This is more of like, hey, they already have everything. We're just kind of swapping out the user interface on the front of this.
Correct.
We're giving them the payments.
That's right. We're giving them the features and functionality, the text to pay, the text to reorder a script, all that feature and functionality kind of payment side of it is what we're bringing to the pharmacy.
Okay, so then let's break these down. So because I know another question is going to be asked a lot. So Cashier Live, let's just break these down as far as dual pricing, surcharging, cash discounting, standard processing. What do these verticals want in your experience, and what do you guys offer?
For sure. So it does vary with each vertical. I would say in the pharmacy side, some want surcharge and dual pricing. Many don't, right? And the reality is the margins tend to be fair and reasonable as they are, and the volumes are there. So Cashier Live today does not have it, but by the end of Q1, Q2, it's in development right now to have full surcharging and dual pricing capability on Cashier Live. But it hasn't been a huge request, which is why it's not there.
Aren't there some restrictions on that too, as far as like if I'm using my insurance to buy something? I don't think or there's something about that, isn't it?
It can be a bit wonky and a little tough, which is why it really isn't a big request.
Most
of them are willing to absorb it. On the text to pay and some of that, there will be a lot of times like a technology fee or some, it's built into the shipping cost sometimes. So there's different ways that it's done to help absorb that, help eliminate the cost. But it isn't different than, as I'll get to it with the restaurant side, where restaurants operate on a super thin margin. Pharmacies can too, but it's just a different dynamic of kind of how they view credit card processing fees and the nature of that. So
I've noticed that a lot too as I've gotten more like verticalized in consulting for software companies and stuff. I mean, there just are some verticals that are not ready yet for that. It doesn't make sense. Okay, then what about Dealer Genie?
So Dealer Genie, surcharging, dual pricing, both are available.
Okay, because I know those are very popular with that vertical.
Correct.
That's really taken off in a way. I was kind of surprised, to be honest, how receptive they were, but it seems very
It took a little bit of time, but once the adoption was there and it went smooth, I mean, the reality is, outside of our first one we ever did, training, you learn as as you go with things, right? We've yet to have anyone else ever revert back, right? It's just the reality of it. Once they do it, as long as the training is there and the staff is comfortable, it's all smooth.
And then we've talked a lot about Union, but give us the high level on that as well.
So Union has cash discounting, and it is built out today where that exists.
Cool, awesome. Okay, so with that said, let me give you one more second. If you didn't do so already, right now, get your phone out, hit the QR code, and go ahead and fill the little form out to contact them. And again, just schedule a call to talk through. I'm sure you guys are going to have other questions for them. So go ahead and do that right now, and then I'm going to go ahead and kick this back off for the share. All right, so we're going to dive in and answer some questions. So if you have any questions at all and you want to ask them about pharmacies, about vertical integration, about software companies, or about the $1,000 bonus and all that, you just go right ahead and ask those, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit here and see what we've got. Yes, we'll do our best to provide a recording of the webinar, which we pretty much always do there. Hopefully we'll get that out. And then, so just to be clear that this works with FSA, and then of course they mentioned the cash discounting, but this does work with FSA cards and all that, which we covered.
Yep. Yeah, that was the HSA, FSA, and making sure that that certification is done. We assist from our team with all of that.
Oren Claff is the author of the book, Flip the Script. Thank you. Who's
go.
that, Stephen? Yeah, Stephen, I should have known I could depend on you for that. Thank you. By the way, fantastic book. If you haven't read it yet, you'll love it. It's really good. If you read it?
I haven't.
It's really good. Flip the Script is like... it's one of those books you read and you're like, is this really true? Is this guy actually do all this stuff? But it's a guy who kind of gets paid to go in and close deals.
Got it.
And so he has all these big deals he closes, and it's really good.
We'll be getting that audiobook on the ride home.
On the ride home, yeah. You'll love it. It's really good. And then, let's see. I have a pharmacy working with a company, we won't say the name of the company, complaining about a brand new $3,000 a year accredited. So the accreditation, is there a cost associated with that? Talk about that a little bit.
There is a cost, and it does depend on who you get it through. So I don't have as good of eyes as James does, so I can't even see who the company is that was referenced, but we can touch base offline. There are times when the merchant, the pharmacy utilizes our fully integrated solution where we may end up helping cover that cost. So it really is just a matter of kind of confirming the volumes are there and making sure everything makes sense, but we can help to alleviate that cost. It's a big part of what we focus on in getting the merchants on board with us, because that cost can be a burden, and especially, as I mentioned before, with a few of these companies that have sent out suspension notices, and in some cases completely shut down the merchant account. Some of, without getting too specific and making it clear who it is, with some that just will not allow the merchants to process at all. They sent out 30-day shutdown notices. And so even if they were willing to pay the cost, they can't process. So that's all stuff that we'll help with to eliminate that issue.
We're not using the name of any companies, but it is the same. It's the same name as a very popular television show. So I'm just going to leave it at that. All right, we had somebody else that asked about where did that go? Hold on. The CGIS registration. So they're asking, is it similar to kind of EBT? Who controls, basically, is the question. Who controls this registration?
CGIS is its own organization, so they technically control it, but it's a process where the merchant applies to them, gets certified. There's a couple different types of certification depending on how the merchant's boarded or how the pharmacy's boarded, and there's a small fee, it's an annual fee that's paid to them, but it's a separate organization.
Got it. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Who does the installation? Yeah, we can talk about that. Talk about the installation process.
So with pharmacies and with Cash Your Life specifically, it's a browser-based solution. So the hardware is relatively straightforward, and there's a lot of flexible options. So rarely do we need to do an on-site install. A lot of times, even the hardware, they may have a computer already there. We're able to utilize that. In some cases, we're providing full hardware, but it's pretty plug and play. So the installation piece isn't typically a big lift because again, it's all cloud-based, so you're not dealing with, like a restaurant environment where you got kitchen display and kitchen printers and all this other stuff. It's usually a really smooth process.
Got it. Okay. So yes, funny, we didn't really talk about this very much. So let's zoom out. Let's talk about your agent program. So there's a couple of people maybe aren't as familiar with Green Payments. So they're asking about do you have an agent program and how does that work? Talk a little bit about just broader picture of your program with 1099s and competitive Schedule A, whatever you want to talk about there.
For sure. So we are purely an agent-driven company. So it's partners that drive all of our business, right? So we're very flexible. At the end of the day, the way we look at it is, are you fully committed and you're focused day in, day out, which I assume most listening now are. Or are you just kind of a referral partner and you're in the insurance business or you're doing something else, you don't want to touch it, you just want to kind of make the warm intro and run away. Either way, we'll put together a program that's super competitive and works for you. Our focus is just surrounding ourselves with the best payment professionals and going from there.
How do you compete against Pioneer and RX30?
So in some cases integration, in other cases just a direct competitor. So it really depends.
Okay, got it. And so a couple questions here I'm going to try to summarize a little bit. So we're talking about, we have our setup a little different today, so even I'm struggling a little bit to see these. I'm like, what does this say? So the idea of the value proposition is really what we're asking. And so we kind of touched on this earlier, but again, what is the core of why should they switch to Green Payments / Cashier Live? What's the value prop of the switch?
Sure. A big part of it is we can help eliminate the number of texts they need. So especially in that compounding environment where they need to call and collect payment, we're essentially eliminating that, right? In some cases, they still do a little bit of it, but in most cases, we eliminate that, which you can imagine if you're a patient and you need to reorder a script, if you have to take the call and then pay over the phone, that versus what our technology will help do in assisting with the refills through text, it literally eliminates the need for certain text. So that's a huge cost savings, putting aside what we can save on the payment processing side. So many of these pharmacies are on legacy platforms that have had merchant accounts for, in some cases, 10, 12, 15 years plus, same merchant account.
Pricing increases every quarter.
So without getting specific on who it is, you can imagine what they're paying. And then when you layer into it the dynamic of the high risk component and the card not present and the risk fees that exist with some of those companies. At the end of the day, the savings can be significant on the processing side as well. So when you layer both sides together, it's a very easy value proposition. And then when you layer into it, knowing how they run their business and what their needs are and really being able to kind of talk shop with them, you really should be closing almost everyone that you walk through.
And then give us what is the homepage URL? I think somebody went to the wrong website.
Greenpayments.io.
There you go. So greenpayments.io, greenpayments.io, just like it sounds. How long does it take? So if a pharmacy comes in and it's like, well, man, they really do need to go through this registration process. What are we talking about?
So the registration process for accreditation can, depending on if they're on the fast track, can be a couple days, upwards of 60 days. So it depends on how that is set up. And that's really it. On the high risk registration, it shouldn't be more than a couple weeks.
Any thoughts on with kind of the current political landscape? Obviously, just getting done with an election. There's a lot of forces kind of looking at the components of the medical side. Any thoughts on the 4-year plan? Have you thought about that at all? 4-year outlook? Anything major changing that you see?
Nothing that I see changing in a big way. I think the compounding world is just going to get busier and busier, and the telemed world is going to get busier and busier. So I think from merchants that we're focused on and helping, it's really getting them the solutions to run the business, to assist with shipping of products, to assist with, pickup of orders. They need a better system because the reality is the legacy software that exists in the pharmacy world just isn't there, and it doesn't help the pharmacies operate the way that they need to today.
So many questions here. We got a lot. This is great. Keep the questions coming. We get a lot. So I think hopefully we've answered this now of, do you get paid on the processing? And I think just to clarify for everybody, it's like, so Green Payments is you think of a traditional ISO, lifetime vested residual split, very competitive. In addition to that, you're now paying $1,000 upfront bonus just for these 3 solutions.
Correct.
Is that right? If I'm a current Green Payments agent and I'm already getting my fantastic residual split and I go out and sell one of these, I'm still going to get this $1,000 bonus. Okay, I just want to make this clear because a lot of that. All right, great.
Yeah, we didn't pick out our top performers and be like, never mind, not you. You don't need it.
Right.
No, we didn't do that.
And I guess the other question, which is a good one, is if you guys thought about kind of how long this bonus program, I'm assuming you're not guaranteeing it for the next 50 years. So what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think our plan is to run it through 2025 and evaluate from there. I think that's our plan.
All right. I think I know the answer to this one, but can Union be integrated with Micros? No, it would replace
Micros. So they're competitors. So similar to what I was saying before, on the Pioneer side. So Micros and Union kind of compete.
So there are definitely some states where dual pricing and surcharging are not allowed. That's not states where dual pricing is not allowed if it's done in a compliant way. That's interesting there. Let's see, what issues, if any, have you seen with? Let's talk about Union for 1 second. What are the big pros and cons? What are the things you've seen that are good, or maybe it's not a good fit over here? Give us some of that, maybe.
For sure. I'd say Union's biggest value prop is for high volume venues that need to move really fast and really efficiently. That's what it's built for. So if you're kind of a coffee shop, it's not built for that, right? It's built for a bar environment. There's a whole guest-led ordering platform platform that also includes brand rewards, which helps drive incremental sales. So if you're a full bar with liquor, beer, wine, it's going to help you drive sales. I can tell you, we have one merchant that we actually did an event there. James, you were there, and year over year, their sales were up 7%, but their transaction count was up 13%. So you can see where even in a world today where people aren't spending as much,
right,
they're able to get way more people through. And they're limited hours, season, relatively it's a seasonal business in the sense of it's by the shore in New Jersey.
Right.
So summertime they're jam packed. They were able to get 13% more transactions through this past summer compared to last year. So that's a huge value prop when you're talking about these venues that need to get people through, because that's where they're making their money in those peak times.
Right. So, okay, this next question is interesting. So I think I could summarize these questions as, how far up market does this pharmacy solution go? Do you guys do kind of more enterprise of, hey, wow, I've got, 47 pharmacy locations? Like where are we at in that?
For sure. So I think the reality from the pharmacy world is that most are kind of that I just call it the middle market, right? The 5 locations to 15 in that range.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, we can do the larger ones as well.
Okay, got it. But you definitely, those 5 to 15 is your sweet spot.
Correct.
5 to 15 locations or independent.
Yep.
Oh yeah, talk about the upfront cost. What about how does hardware and all of that kind of work with these pharmacy deals?
So on the pharmacy side, in some cases, there's no hardware that they even need, right? Because they have a computer, they have a printer, they have a cash drawer, and we integrate right with what they have. So it's just literally a browser icon. We walk them through it, get everything set up. Otherwise, it's give or take about $2,000 for the full setup for one station, and it just kind of goes from there depending on what they need.
If they already have done registrations, are there any registrations that then have to be done over again because they switched processors?
Typically, no. Okay. So once it's set up, it should be in place.
Okay, we're just buzzing right through these questions. We're doing pretty good. This is great.
Good.
All right. And by the way, if you are, man, you got to jump off, that's fine. Make sure you go to greenpayments.io. Some of you have asked questions about, hey, I want to see a demo. I want to see more about the product. Just go to greenpayments.io, click on Contact Us, right?
Yep.
Fill that form out, and the team will follow up, and they can help you get more info on that. Okay, we already answered that one, I think. What about, do you guys work with maybe smaller ISOs that have agents, like a sub-agent program where they want to pay their agents, and do you do that kind of thing?
We do. We call it an agent office, but we have several of them, and we're happy to talk and put together a really competitive program that makes sense.
Minimum processing volumes that you're looking at with this $1,000 bonus for pharmacies, or like what's maybe average volumes you can talk about a little bit?
The pharmacy, the reason we pick those verticals is because typically you're not dealing with kind of a micro merchant pharmacy, right? Just because of the nature of what it takes to start a pharmacy, you're going to have to push bigger volumes, otherwise you won't be in business, right? So, so usually there's really not, we didn't put a volume metric in place. I would say typically, our smaller merchants are going to be that 10 to 20,000. Our average merchant's about 90,000 in volume. So, we tend to have those larger merchants, and that's, consistent with the verticals.
Good. So we got that answer. So then I guess one of the other questions here, just to clarify, when we talk about the onboarding process, circling back to that for a minute, so there's some other questions about that. What is actually involved in, the merchant account got approved, and now it's like they have to go live. What are the steps, and how long do those steps take? Obviously, the merchant might delay a month and say, well, I'm not ready yet. But assuming the merchant's like, I'm ready to go, what are the steps to get Cashier Live going?
So it's basically 2 phone calls, and we assist with getting everything set up. So, if they have an existing inventory sheet, then we'll program that inventory. If they don't, then we'll assist with getting, all their inventory and items inputted. And other than that, it's, like I said, it's 2 phone calls, and they're up and live.
Okay, awesome. I'm just looking to see what other questions we got here. Thank you, those that are giving feedback that it's informative. That's great. Let's see. And I think, you talk about, it's industry lingo that we need to know. Obviously, there's always that industry lingo. We covered a lot of that, I think, today. But I think, anytime you get into these industries, it's interesting to me because it's not an overwhelming thing. No. You go to use ChatGPT and teach me about pharmacies. I don't know. Right?
Coming into the business, I was a restaurant, started in real estate, but then really a restaurant franchise guy, right? I didn't know payments really. I didn't know pharmacies for sure.
Right.
But to your point, you learn it. And there, almost every pharmacy operates the same, right?
Yeah.
Very similar if you do work with restaurants, you work with car dealerships. Most of them all operate the same. It's just they have their own unique way. They may have a certain drug they sell or a certain product they sell or a certain way they sell it. But the general operating business is pretty similar. So once you do 2 or 3, it really will come natural. And our team will be there to back you up through through each time.
Love it. Well, you know what? If I missed your question, I do apologize. And of course, again, I will make sure and provide all this registration questions to you guys, and I'm sure their team can follow up. Ben, I want to thank you for driving all the way out here.
Of course.
And having this great event. Hopefully, our audience is going to latch onto this and say, okay, wait, I got to start going after some specific verticals.
Yeah.
So we've got auto dealerships covered, we got pharmacies covered, we got high volume venues covered with Union.
Yep.
So here's 3 great verticals, $1,000 upfront bonus plus the lifetime vested residual.
Yep.
I think you guys are doing everything you can to help these agents get the vertical solutions going. Any final words to my audience of just the importance of the shift that we're seeing in our industry and what they need to do to embrace it?
I would just say, know that a side terminal on its own 5-10 years from now is just not where to be. And pick a vertical that you like, pick an industry you like. Maybe it's where you spent your career prior to payments. Maybe it's something you just enjoy. You're a hobbyist in whatever it may be. Pick that, figure out where you can monetize the payments, and then find solutions that work for it. And I will say, we talked about 3 specific verticals. Part of our onboarding process, we've got several different verticals that we have specific solutions for, and we go through that. But I will say it changes constantly because we may get a new partner and they have some specific niche vertical they're in and they need a solution for that. So our team goes out and finds those solutions. So don't feel like you're on your own having to figure that out. You can always work with us, and but I will say, identify those solutions and find a partner that will help you with it to onboard the merchants, train the merchants, and help them successfully utilize the solution. Because if they do that, they will be stickier and they will be there, and you'll build a really strong portfolio. That is, at the end of the day, what you should be focused on.
Love it. Great stuff. Well, thanks again for taking the time, Ben. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us today, and I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your weekend.
Thanks, everyone.